Super. So good evening, everyone. As Nita mentioned, my name is Andrew Flam. I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center. Okay. Um, I wanted just to spend a quick minute sort of referencing kind of who we are and what we do. And hopefully tonight's conversation inspires you and think, I guess, or to see methods about how you might want to be able to kind of build or formalize a small business of your own and see how we might be able to help in those entrepreneurial efforts. So, in short, our center is part of Lubin School of Business, and we provide no cost assistance to entrepreneurs looking to either expand, launch, or sort of anywhere in between in terms of a small business venture. We have full-time business advisors who work with entrepreneurs day in and day out, um, and their focus is really thinking about how to help you kind of get through pain points in terms of, as I said, launching, formalizing, and/or expanding a business. So it could be issues such as access to finance, marketing strategies, procurement opportunities, how to get kind of land contracts, certifications that might be relevant for you to help kind of get a leg up on businesses, and other operational issues. So just to think of us as kind of a resource for you as you envision your entrepreneurial the kinds of folks we work with day in and day out. Some are existing small business owners, working through challenges related to COVID-19. Other folks, who have kind of a side hustle, so thinking about how to transition and kind of expand and formalize a business venture. Um, and I think Gina is kind of example of, what she's done in the time that I've gotten a chance to know her. I think will be kind of exciting examples for you to sort of hear about today. And then the third group are kind of folks that are kind of more traditional startup businesses, thinking about how it is that you can kind of go about kind of bringing an idea to the marketplace. So all that to say, kind of, I put our website and email address in the chat if you're interested in kind of pursuing or sort of thinking about your own business venture. Please do reach out to us. All our services are offered at no cost, and we're happy to set up a remote one-on-one session with you to kind of go through some of those issues. So that's kind of our brief description of who we are, what we do, but wanted to shift over. And obviously, the reason we're all here today is to kind of hear the inspiring story about Gina Holzer and how she's come about bringing about her business. I'll just make a kind of quick intro. Some of this you may have seen in the invite and in the registration as well. But Gina is the founder and CEO of Holy Dose, a collagen-based supplement company geared towards better beauty and health. Gina has been featured in a wide range of publications, has been a guest speaker at a beauty summit, and kind of most importantly and exciting, I guess, in terms of the population here, both received her undergraduate degree in entrepreneurship as well as an MBA in marketing management from PACE. So we're delighted that Gina is with us. And then I guess sort of the thing that we'll touch on a little bit as part of our discussion today, that Gina did in fact, and as Professor Ray had kind of referenced, Gina had a chance to kind of start her business venture while she was in grad school. So hopefully this will be kind of a bit of an inspiration for some of you as well. So with that, I guess I wanted to more formally and officially welcome Gina, and I look forward to our conversation today.
Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Gina Holzer. I am the founder and CEO of Holy Dose. I went to PACE myself, as Andrew mentioned, for both undergraduate and graduate school while I was in Dr. Ray's class. She was one of my favorite teachers. So I'm really excited to be here today, and hopefully we can connect after this meeting.
All right. So I thought what we would do in terms of our discussion, Gina and I had a chance to kind of go through some of the kind of the inspiring things that she has worked through, some of the lessons learned and things that she'd like to kind of convey. So I think, we'll sort of facilitate a discussion, kind of talking about her venture and kind of the process that she's gone through. But of course, we want to make sure that we leave time for questions at the end. So that Nina, our colleague, is moderating and kind of we'll manage the chat as well. So hopefully we'll get to some of the questions that you have, but obviously we're looking forward to making sure we build that time in for that at the end as well. So maybe in terms of kind of kicking us off, Gina, maybe let's think and sort of think back to kind of your time in your kind of your pre-launch phase, I guess, as you were in school, and sort of the things that struck a chord with you with respect to kind of your early market research and understanding of kind of what gap in the marketplace might exist.
Right. So the market research that I had prior to launching was my own experience. I spent my early life from teenage years up until I was in college trying so many different beauty products, trying to improve my skin and grow my hair thicker and improve my immune system and all of this. And so because I wasn't able to get the results from the products that I tried, all of these products promised to do one thing while it was really just a waste of money and a waste of time. That was really my own experience that I went through. And I know that I also had a lot of friends and family who also went through these same issues. But again, that's not real market research. That's firsthand experience. And so it was really Holy Dose was really a solution to a problem that I had for such a long time.
I love how you kind of word that in terms of a solution to a problem. I mean, by, I guess, market research, I guess I'm thinking about, it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of more formal research studies in terms of, review of secondary materials. I think your ability to kind of look at and see kind of the gap in the marketplace and kind of what you're thinking was, can or should be there, I think is right on the money. Um, well, what I kind of was inspired with from your discussion in terms of sort of thinking about this, and as you kind of had these experiences, maybe talk a bit about um, as you were kind of starting to plan things out. Um, what was there a kind of a formal or informal process in terms of how the business venture came together? Um, were there kind of thoughts about kind of categories of expenses that you thought you might need to be able to tackle to kind of have it in a more kind of formal launch process?
So before I launched, because of all the pace classes we took, and I knew what specific categories I would have needed capital for in the business realm. So that would include, getting a website going, which is later down the line, but really it's getting an LLC if you do choose to form an LLC, write your business license. And if you do have a physical location, then you would need to get a license from the city to sell as well. So really all of the documents, I started with that. I started out with getting my business license. I didn't know what name I wanted at the time, and my initial name wasn't Holy Dose. It was a different name, which I later had to change. And another thing was talking to manufacturers. That was another thing because the bulk of the industry that I do work in is the product. So I knew I had to have some sort of capital or really start to get the product going. So those are it. But in terms of the process of getting started, I would say it was a mix between formal and informal. So I started out with a business plan. In school, they teach you how to write a business plan, how to do it correctly. And so I actually did those things. What I used was keynotes, and I just put a bunch of things in there. And of course, spreadsheets as well, calculating the financials and everything. But, I'll be honest, in terms of the business plan, I think I could have gone without the formal business plan. The most important thing really that stayed with me was getting the numbers right. And, when you start a business, making sure your numbers are correct or just really paying attention to that is key. Another thing is getting a strategy together for you to launch from ideation to the actual product or service that you're doing. And so I started out in the crossroads between that. Um, so yeah, it was a mix of formal and informal processes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that the thing that you touched on certainly that's relevant to a lot of the clients we work with that I think is so crucial. Business plans don't need to be 100-page documents, but I think the ability and capacity for you to kind of go through the process, and I think particularly to be able to understand those categories of expenses, so you can kind of start to think through operationally how things are going to work out and kind of what your needs are, I think is so crucial. The other thing that kind of jumped out at me, and maybe a nice transition topic, I think you were talking about kind of working with manufacturers. Um, And I was really interested in our early discussion about your work, I guess, as a new business venture and kind of the creation of samples. Maybe talk a bit about how that worked in terms of your experience with manufacturers as a new small business and kind of not being able, to necessarily need millions of pieces with it with respect to your order.
So the manufacturing process was the most difficult process in the beginning. It still is. Manufacturing in general, it's not all fun and dandy. It's quite difficult, and especially when you start out as a small business, as a startup, a new business, or if you have a very small order volume, it's even more difficult. So what I did was I didn't know how to start a supplement business. I had no clue. So I went on Google and I did my own research to see, well, where do I need to start? And that's when I realized that manufacturing was the biggest step to try to find somebody who could actually produce the products. And so I researched hundreds of manufacturers within the United States. And when I say hundreds, I really mean it because if I wasn't in class at Pace University during grad school, I would be home or in the hallways trying to research manufacturers to call. So it was a lot. And prior to that, actually, I saw who was on my network on LinkedIn and Facebook, who I knew worked in the beauty wellness industry. And there were only a few people that I knew when I reached out to those. It was maybe two people, and they didn't want to help. And that's one thing you'll run into. So sometimes you just have to do it yourself, and that's what I did. And so after speaking to hundreds of manufacturers, getting quotes, the process took quite some time. I was able to find a manufacturer and get the sample process going.
Right. Yeah, I think your reference to kind of using your network, and we'll certainly touch on that as we get to the marketing side of things. But I think being able to tap into and understand kind of who's out there to potentially support you, kind of in advisory roles. Sometimes, as you said, it'll work, and sometimes not. But being able to understand who's out there that could potentially open doors for you is kind of a big lesson and kind of important. I think not just this industry, but in all industries.
Mhm.
Uh, so I guess you have samples in hand. You've gone through this massive process of identifying a manufacturer that would be able to work with kind of more modest numbers of folks, of volume. Maybe talk a bit about the I guess the non-disclosure agreement. Any other kind of things that were part of that process in terms of making sure that what you were creating, you had we're going to have full ownership of, and you weren't going to have any concerns with respect to what happened to your ideas.
Mhm. So one thing that I learned early is that you should always protect yourself, especially the ideations or whatever ideas that you bring to the table. And so before I gave the formula that I've discovered at home, before I gave those to any manufacturer that I spoke with to get a quote, I always requested an NDA first. And it's interesting because there were some manufacturers who said we don't need an NDA; those don't work anyways. I said, okay, well, if you're not going to sign an NDA, I'm not going to give you my formula. I'm not going to work with you. So it's really important. I did that with every manufacturer. And so after the NDA process was completed, I then gave them the formulation that I wanted, the specifications, and to which they sent over various quotes. And once we agreed on one, then that's when the sampling process started.
Great.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's really an important kind of lesson to learn in terms of not just taking their word for it. I mean, you really took this seriously, and I kind of commend you for. It's obviously extra work, and it kind of limits your options. But I think you want to keep yourself in kind of a spot where your idea kind of remains and in your ownership. So that's great.
Thank you.
Um, so now, I guess at this point, you've got the development that you've worked through. You've got the samples in place. Maybe talk a bit about some of I guess, the initial uses of your samples and how you were able to um, kind of be able to generate an understanding of its impacts, and any kind of amendments that you had to make with respect to the product.
So what I did before the actual samples were created was that I asked my manufacturer to send me individual ingredients so I can test them initially. And that's really one thing that we stand behind still to this day is the quality of the ingredients. And so from that, I was able to test them on myself and friends and family as well while the samples were being produced. And so once I received the samples, if it was good to go, I would give the manufacturer an okay to go into full production. And when that did happen, I used those samples to give to my friends and family so that they can try. And what I did was I took pictures of them, all of them before they started Holy Dose, and I made them take pictures after 1 month of use and then after 2 months of use. And when I saw the really big difference in their skin and their hair health and the things that they were telling me, but the pictures, especially the before and after photos, that's when I knew that this is the ingredients are correct, the quality of the ingredients are correct, and especially the absorption level of the ingredients. And so full production took about a couple of months, but once that was finished, they would send another final product from the full production so that I would have to approve that. And then they would send the mass order. And if there was something wrong within that process with the final batch, then I would have had to reject it and they would have to do it again.
Right. I mean, I think that the, in our discussion, and I guess in sort of hearing it, further now in terms of the impacts, I mean, we always kind of encourage our clients to kind of work with folks where you can kind of have a definitive, a proof of concept. I think that, in this case, obviously friends and family were using it, but as you point out, kind of the picture tells, was the picture is as good as 1,000 words or whatever it is, being able to kind of see the actual impacts from what you've done, to be able to kind of use that to demonstrate kind of that there's, that there's impacts from kind of what you've created, I think is really, really important.
Right, and I do have to mention that while I was experimenting and testing and blending my own supplement blends at home when I was not in class, I concocted those ingredients based on scientific research. I looked up journals and saw which ingredients work best together for what results, and those were all clinically studied ingredients, and they all had their own clinical studies with before and after photos. So it was pretty surreal when I was able to create Holy Dose and then see Holy Dose's effect on people who use Holy Dose themselves.
Hmm. Great. So now we've I guess got your your samples. They've been amended and kind of this the proof of concept in terms of their impacts. Um, can you now sort of walk us through, I guess, and now you're ready for kind of full production. Maybe start to think about, let's shift the gears a little bit and start to think about, from a sales and marketing perspective. You now have kind of a finished product, if you will, and let's sort of maybe walk folks through what it was like in terms of some of your initial, packaging arrangements, sort of initial thoughts about kind of how you sort of touched initially on a little bit in terms of some of your kind of social media outreach. Maybe let's sort of shift our conversation now to some of your earlier kind of marketing and sales techniques.
The first thing that I did before launching was create my social media pages. And I did this a year before launching. But one mistake that I did, and I definitely learned from, was that I didn't build my social media audience before. I started building my audience and started posting content and engaging with people about 1 month before launching. And the reason for that was because I was just so caught up in the production process and the planning process and everything. That was one area that I kept pushing off, and I really do wish I would have done it earlier. And I recommend that if you start a business or a blog or whatever it is, to build your audience up to 6 months before launching. I would actually recommend 3 to 6 months before launching. And it's okay if you don't have a product or the service ready. For you to get feedback from your audience, from your potential audience, that's really key because you can build that relationship much earlier in the process, and then when you launch, then you already have that relationship going with them.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Hmm.
think it's really a crucial point, and I think you're referencing to 3 to 6 months out. I think is really an interesting one because so much of what entrepreneurs are focused on, whether it's a product or service, it's all about the creation of this widget. It's about bringing it to the marketplace and sort of being excited about um, having customers use it, but all of your energies are really so focused on, as you point out, about creating this finished product. You are trying to refine it. You're trying to think about what it might look like, what it might involve, um, but kind of making sure you kind of carve out time to generate kind of a future pipeline of interested parties. Whether it's stakeholders for investment, whether it's customers, whatever it might be. So crucial. So thank you for highlighting.
Right. And I do have to mention that another area of marketing that I wish I did before was PR. So in the beginning, I launched without any PR, without reaching out to any publications. They can be anything from Forbes to Vogue to really any publication out there. And I just held off on it, and I did not start PR until a little bit later down the line. But one thing that I learned is that you should actually try to gain traction digitally all across before your launch, so that when you do launch, hopefully a publication or more can pick up your story and start advertising for you that way.
Mhm. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's sort of a nice transition topic. I know in our earlier discussion, you had referenced a contact of yours. I think it was from high school that you had found that was in, I guess, the media industry. And maybe you want to share that story because I think it's a compelling way to sort of demonstrate. You never know who's going to remember you. You never know kind of how these contacts might be able to generate that kind of press buzz.
Of course, yeah. So when I was in high school, I started my first company, which was at Headband Line, and I won a small business award back then. And so a journalist from a local newspaper picked up my story and interviewed me for that award. And what I did was I connected with him on LinkedIn immediately after the story was published or during. And so when Holy Dose launched and when I started looking into PR, I thought about my network, and I thought, who do I know is a journalist or might know journalists. And so I thought about that article, and I went on LinkedIn, and luckily I was thrilled that I connected with him. Otherwise I would not have had the chance to really connect with him. But so I saw that he worked at NBC News, which is a very big step up in the local newspaper. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, I hope you're doing well. I started a new company. Let me know if you would be interested in writing about it. And at that time, I knew that he only wrote about politics. He didn't write about lifestyle or business anymore, but I still reached out to him. And he got back to me and he said, hi, Gina, I hope you're doing well. Although I don't cover that area, let me forward you to somebody in my department who does. And from there, I was able to get a full article on NBC about the launch of Holy Dose, which helped kick us off tremendously.
Yeah,
And
I think
that's the power
that's
of networking. Yeah.
Yeah, I said the power of networking for sure. I mean, sort of even if it's relying on folks that either or friends of friends or whatever it may be, just kind of understanding or knowing that if you have exciting news to share, to make sure that you get that out there as widely as possible.
And I also
Compelling story.
recommend that, after any event, or maybe you have a guest speaker in class, or really all of any of your teachers, try to connect with them all on LinkedIn, because it's very helpful later down the line. You might need advice or you might need a job, and it's great to build that connection while you can.
It's excellent.
Mhm.
Um, so I guess we've talked a bit about the importance of networking. You've talked about kind of your lessons learned in terms of social media launch. Um, Maybe let's transition at this point to kind of non-organic. So let's think about kind of paid, whether it's social media advertising or other pieces that you kind of sort of started with. Um, I guess you had talked initially about kind of budgeting and making sure this was part of your business planning process, kind of understanding that there's going to be some costs there. Maybe talk about some of the early categories of expenses and if you thought some were more successful than others.
So advertising is very costly. It's very, very expensive. And when you're a startup and you're not an expert in advertising, it's pretty difficult to build a successful campaign. And I'll give you an example. So marketing was always my interest since I was younger, but I never had any experience in marketing. So when I was in graduate school, I took an internship at a marketing agency, and I really picked up a lot from being there, from learning from that company to help shape me for Holy Dose. And so when Holy Dose launched, I took that knowledge from that agency and also what I learned in the classes at Pace, especially Dr. Ray's classes, and I really applied it to Holy Dose when I launched. And one of the things I learned about marketing and advertising is that when you plan a strategy, don't plan too far in advance because the marketing landscape and the advertising landscape is constantly changing. And I'll give you an example. So before I launched, I was very excited about the marketing side and I mapped out my whole plan. And the biggest part of my paid strategy was influencer marketing. And I know that's not really traditional for ads, but influencer marketing was huge at the time. So many brands were doing it, and they were all preaching about if you gift X amount of influencers your product, then you're good. You should be great. But the thing is, when I launched, it was about a year after I was really honing in on those strategies, and the whole landscape changed, and they got more competitive. And influencer marketing no longer had that same effect if I would have followed those same steps. And so that's one of the things I learned. In terms of advertising channels that I did, influencer marketing was one of them. Another one was social media paid advertising, Facebook and Instagram ads. And the other was Google ads. And more recently, we're doing Amazon ads now. So those are really all of the advertising channels, the paid media channels that we have done and some that we still do to this day.
Mhm. Before we jump into some of your, I guess, the sales and distribution side of the story, can you estimate how much of your time presently you're spending on kind of the marketing side of your business, would you say?
Over 50%.
Mm,
Yeah, and Andrew, it's funny that you bring that up because since launching, I really focused, and I had my team focused on social media marketing because it was hot at the time. It was trending, and we had some good months, especially during the holiday season, we had some good months from social media and social media advertising. But what I recently learned was that a lot of our traffic was actually organic and still is. It's organic and direct traffic. And I wouldn't have known that if I would not have gone on Google Analytics to see that. This whole time I thought in my head, social media advertising is the way. But after going on Google Ads, I realized, wow, only that amount is coming from social media. And although we had good months, now it's all organic and direct. And so recently we actually had to shift our marketing strategies to split up the time more as to which is really driving in the traffic more.
mhm. No, it's a really interesting and important point in terms of being able to be fluid. I mean, I think you make modest investments in different marketing tools, and to be able to be smart as you have, I think, in terms of assessing how each of them is doing, and being able to adjust your, whether it's your messaging or whether it's the actual medium that you're using, to be able to kind of make those changes on the fly. I think is so important.
And then one thing I have to say is, while I was at Pace, I took a couple of marketing classes, and some of those were advertising and digital advertising. And I really am glad that I paid attention in class because I learned what pay per click was and how to do that and what this meant. And I'm not being sarcastic, but it's you have to do your own research and you have to learn and actually experience it and do it yourself. And
Mhm.
maybe you're not launching a business yet, but you can create your own Google Ads account. You can create your own domain page, and maybe you can play around with it before you launch to see if there's anything that you need to know before launching
Yeah.
your advertising. Mhm.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think it's an important message, for entrepreneurs to get. It's, you know, uh, develop a marketing strategy and start to develop a pipeline of interested folks early. And then if your experience is, representative, I think, be prepared to spend up to half of your time kind of, further marketing your company, because I think it's more than, just getting the widget out there. It's kind of how you continue to be able to kind of generate that pipeline of interested folks.
Mhm.
It's good to know. Um, let's shift over to now. I guess we've talked a bit about the kind of the marketing side of things. Would love to dive a bit deeper now into kind of some of the initial clients. So I guess we've talked about kind of how you've generated, interest and awareness from your prospective clients. Kind of you had that finished product now. Maybe let's talk a bit about some of your early kind of sales and distribution efforts in terms of who were some of the early users, how are you able to expand from just friends and family to kind of more of a broad-based usership.
My first clients, my first customers were friends and family. And what I did was when we launched, I had a big launch day for it. I really built up the momentum. I invited friends and family members to attend this launch party. And you don't need to have an event, but to build up the momentum, maybe you have a virtual event or just a virtual launch date. That really helps because the people in your life, friends and family who really want to support you or really want to try your product or service, they'll most likely purchase, they'll be your first customers, they'll be your first clients. And then what I did was I asked if they can tell all of their friends and family, and this really ties into word of mouth marketing, which is still one of our best marketing strategies up until this day. And the thing is, if I wouldn't have asked them to tell their friends and family, then I probably wouldn't have gotten those sales, or I wouldn't have able to have customers love Holy Dose. And so, aside from that, on the launch day, I had a special friends and family discount code where they can send to all their friends and family and try Holy Dose for the first time because being a new company is hard. You don't have credibility. You don't know, people don't know if your product or service is good, but giving them a little incentive might really up the ante for them to try your product or service.
Hmm.
And so I did that. And then within the first week of launching, I can't recall which day, but I started getting orders from non-friends and family, and I knew that I was on a good track. And so really, we started getting orders in the very first day. Hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, and I guess that organic growth, I think being able to kind of build off of that, tight inner circle and sort of figuring out how to, generate that referral network and folks are going to be committed to you and kind of spokespersons for you, I guess, in terms of the impacts. That's really important.
Hmm.
Um, let's transition, I guess, at that point, I guess, to talk about kind of how you've got some kind of strangers coming in and kind of doing some sales through that way. Maybe let's talk also about you've landed some retailers and other folks who are carrying your product and how that ultimately transitioned and got you up to Nordstrom, which was obviously very exciting.
So we're a direct to consumer brand. We sell on our website, and when I first launched Holy Dose, I only kept it that way. I didn't want to enter really any wholesale channels yet, no retailers. I really wanted to try to keep it direct to consumer. And I started realizing that although that's great, and we're not a unicorn company, it's really difficult to become a unicorn company where you just skyrocket your sales. I decided to look into retail channels to start wholesaling Holy Dose into stores. And our first retailer is Bubble Goods. They're based in New York. Actually, they're an online health food marketplace. The first time I heard about them was on Instagram, and I always followed what they did. I knew they were local, and I said, why not try? And so I submitted my product to them, and they approved it. And so that was our first retailer. And so after that, um, I didn't actually I didn't focus on wholesale really until COVID happened. So COVID rolled around and we had to change our marketing strategies, really operation strategies, everything you can think of completely because of COVID. It was a very scary and different time for everyone, including having your business strategies. And so we stopped pushing out content on our social media pages, on our website, and everything how we usually did it, and we shifted gears so that we can offer our audience, our community, helpful content instead of just pretty images or how to do this, how to do that with your hair and all of this. So what we did was we started this virtual expert series, and We looked for experts across various fields that fall within our industry, and that had to do with beauty, health, and wellness and nutrition. And so we gathered everyone from doctors, and I think it was about 6 people, 6 experts. We gathered doctors, estheticians, hairstylists, nutritionists, and we asked them if they can share some really valuable content with our audience. And one of those experts was an esthetician. She's based in San Diego. And she ended up being one of our biggest retailers because of COVID also. She had to shift gears and she couldn't go work in her office anymore. So she started selling skincare products online. And so after this whole virtual series that we did, she started this and she asked if, she can sell our products. And I said yes. And up until this day, she's one of our biggest retailers. So don't underestimate the power of small, or don't be afraid of really channeling different distribution channels, and really community is where it's at. If you find people who can stand behind you and your product, you don't know where that can take you. And so anyways, so ever since then we started retailing to a lot of beauty shops, hair salons. We got on Actually, yeah, we got on some wholesale websites where the platform would connect brands like Holy Dose with retailers, big and small. And so we started getting wholesale orders from there. And then Nordstrom's reached out to us earlier this year, and they asked if we can send them samples of our products because they're interested in carrying it in their beauty shop. And so that opened the door to Nordstrom's, and we landed them. And so wholesale has been one of our biggest sales channels to this day. And I wish I did it earlier. I really wish I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting perspective and sort of, your early launch strategies and kind of how you come together initially and how that evolves, whether it's um, based on expanding capacity, new channels through which you can do sales, and or obviously external factors like COVID-19, where you have to sort of think through other methodologies of getting your product out there. So again, kind of the ability as an entrepreneur to um, understand that things are fluid and be able to be flexible in terms of implementing your business model, I think is so crucial.
And really just adapting, and seeing what opportunity there is. And so I forgot to mention, during COVID or before COVID, I started a list of wholesalers of stores that I wanted to reach out to try to get Holy Dose in there. And one of them was Chill House. They're based in New York City. They're a facial and nail place. I'm sure a lot of the ladies in here know about it. But they're big. They're pretty big in New York. And I tried to reach out to them before COVID, but nobody got back to me. And I reached out to their general email online. But during COVID, I started noticing on social media that a lot of people, particularly founders, such as the Chill House founder, Cindy, they started being more active online. So I wondered, well, now that everyone is home, let me try to email her and see, maybe she'll get back to me. Maybe she has more time, she's at home more. And you know what? She got back to me, and now we're retailing in their store. So that's another lesson learned pivoting during COVID.
Great, great. Love to spend a few minutes, I guess, as I want to make sure we leave some time for Q&A, but I guess the last um, segment I was thinking about was I wanted to sort of, see if you had some initial thoughts, based on our discussion about kind of lessons learned and sort of where you're envisioning, the business going. I think that as you've pointed out, some things are kind of hard to recognize in advance. So, the ability to pivot and the understanding, how and when one might do that, I think is so crucial. Maybe spend a few minutes or think about if there are key things you want to get across to folks in terms of lessons learned and kind of, where you think you're going from here.
So I touched on a few lessons learned, but another one that I want to bring up is, um, when you start a business or a blog, or something that you're doing, your project, really try to expand your market channels and your distribution channels. And don't be biased to what you think might be good for you, or what might be right. You really should go with the market and see what's out there. And I'll give you an example. Before I launched, I absolutely did not want to go on Amazon. I did not want to sell on there. I refused to. And I started realizing that, Amazon just, they're taking over, but they are really catching up to Google. So when a shopper goes to find something online and when they're ready to purchase, they'll most likely go on Google or they'll go on Amazon. And so I started realizing this, and I applied to go on Amazon, which was very difficult because Amazon, it's not like those days before years ago where they were calling all brands to go on their platform. They made the process so easy. It's not like that anymore. If anything, the process now is a lot more difficult because everything is under AI. It's all machine learning. And so because I put something that their machine learning thought that was incorrect and they flagged it as spam, it took me a couple months to get onto Amazon because nobody would get back to me because all of this is, these are all robots answering you. I couldn't get in touch with a person, with a real person to tell them, this is really me. This is really the owner of Holy Dose. And it was a nightmare. And so I reached out to a marketing agency who specialized in Amazon, and I was about to invest and pay them to help me get onto Amazon because they already had people that they were speaking with. And what do you know? The day that I was about to start my contract with them, an Amazon rep reached out to me and said, "Hey Gina, I saw Holy on Instagram on your Instagram ads. Great job. You should sell on Amazon." And from there, he helped me on board through the whole process, which was still not as smooth sailing, but it was much easier. So that's one thing I learned is, if you can get onto a marketing channel or a distribution channel early, definitely try to do that. It's better to try than not to try and run into issues later,
Mhm.
certain barriers. And then another thing is, you're in school and you have your classes and you have your projects, right? So I found that the team projects and presentations really help tone in my skills for public speaking, working with others, organizing, pitching, your creative, and any chance that you get, try to be the team leader because it'll help prep you to really handle kind of all aspects of the project, which you might have to do later on if you start a business or if you're a manager. Um, and then another thing is to get as much experience as you can. You might want to, you might not know what you want to do, but you won't know until you get experience. And so if you're able to pick up an internship or a job or go shadow someone, I highly recommend it because that can really shape your future.
Yeah, I really appreciate your mentioning kind of the ability and focus on pitching. I mean, that's certainly at the Small Business Development Center, we do kind of a range of webinars and classroom work and one-on-one kind of shaping of that. And a number of our clients have won pitch competitions. So I appreciate you referencing that because it's important
It
to be
is.
able to very succinctly kind of describe who you are, what you do, and why somebody should invest in you, buy from you, whatever else it might.
Mhm.
The other piece I wanted to mention, I guess maybe as a closing thought, and then maybe turn it over to Nina, is I guess you're referencing in terms of internships and opportunities, and I would be remiss if I didn't say that Gina is kind of a terrific entrepreneur and a strong business owner. And maybe if you want to talk about kind of entrepreneurial advice and or internship opportunities that you think might be relevant or helpful for folks here on the call today.
Yeah, so one thing I recommend for you to get an internship or a position is connect with your teachers. They've worked in their field for so long, and they know a lot of people in their field, and it's very helpful if you get to know your teachers and really talk to them. Connect with them on LinkedIn, have a conversation with them. Maybe they can help guide you in the direction that you want to go towards, and maybe they can help you find an internship or just really any opportunity. And one thing is, I had a class, I believe during my sophomore year, and the professor brought in guest speakers all the time. And I always connected with those guest speakers after they presented. And I stayed in contact with one of them. And when I was looking for an internship, I met up with him and I asked, are you looking for any interns? And he said, yes, we're looking for sales only. But actually, before he even said that, he said, we might. What is it that you want to do? And I specifically said marketing. Then he said, this is not the right internship for you. I think you should go find a marketing internship. And that's what I did. And I'm very grateful for that to this day.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And how about internship opportunities with Holy Dose? Is there something in the works there that you think folks should be connecting with you on?
Absolutely. So we at Holy Dose, we're always looking for interns in writing, in marketing, in social media marketing, even in really business. It's hard to get experience in business and entrepreneurship if you're not actually doing the things. And so we're really looking for interns in those realms. And our first intern, she went to Pace. She still is. She's in this room, Kristen. She was
Hi.
our first intern. And I'm very grateful to have her. But yeah, so we have internships always available. And if you're looking for one, definitely reach out to me. I'll put my email address in the chat below and more information about that.
That's great. Um, well, we do have about 10 minutes left. I hope from a timing perspective this works. I know we had covered a lot of ground today, but I wanted to, well, first, thank you, Gina. I really enjoyed the conversation. And Nina, I guess maybe I'll turn it over to you if there's questions in the chat that you want to go through. I'm happy to pitch in, but I imagine many or all of the questions might be for Gina as well. So
Thank you.
thanks.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to throw them into the chat. But we have a couple that were posed during registration. One is, what, if any, initial capital constraints did you have to contend with, and what did you do to overcome those challenges?
A big thing for capital was budgeting in the beginning to see, where funds would go. And so a challenge that we ran into was production, really. We launched with 5 products. And looking back in hindsight, I really wished that we launched with less because it would have taken less capital and we could have used that other capital to do other things. And so when you're planning capital to launch, it's really important to budget correctly and always over budget. Don't under budget. Don't budget exactly how you think it is. Add a little bit extra because chances are you'll probably go over. And always have room for extra budgeting, whether you want to use that for marketing, for advertising, to hire someone, maybe to buy a new product or get a new website, whatever it is. Always save a little bit extra when you're planning that. And initial capital. What did I do to overcome? Oh, really just back to the budgeting board. I had a spreadsheet that I used, and I always updated it. And then I eventually started using an accounting software. Can't think about it off the top of my head. It's a really big one. Oh, QuickBooks. And that has helped tremendously because you can generate automatic reports on there. You don't have to build your own spreadsheets or anything. It does it automatically for you.
I would reiterate kind of the aspect with respect to budgeting. I mean, two other things that I would reference outside of Gina's experience. Number one is kind of generating a relationship with a small business lender. In New York City, in particular, has a wide range of community-based organizations that really where their mission is to support small business and including startup businesses. So whether it's credit unions or other community development financial institutions or CDFIs, I mean, these are groups that are in place where they're kind of trying to support and build and grow businesses within the communities they serve. So that's an excellent resource. The second thing that I would reference is crowdfunding. Not relevant for all business models, but to be able to kind of help build traction and help identify opportunities or folks that are going to be kind of early believers in kind of who you are, what you do. That could be an interesting opportunity. Those are kind of just two financing ideas.
And if you want to go the investor route, don't be afraid to reach out to investors. There are a lot of new investors, new investment groups where they want to, for example, invest in beauty companies as opposed to software. You just have to find the right one. And there are both large and small investors out there. So don't be afraid to pitch to them because you'll probably get 100 no's before you get one maybe. But that's quite normal.
I feel like we've touched on this, but what is the first suggestion for an individual who wants to start a business?
Oh, the first suggestion is to start. So it's really easy to try to plan your business plan and try to get everything perfect before launching and doing this and that. But the best thing you can do is to start. And, that can be under a number of things. That can be getting a prototype, conducting market research, launching a survey, talking to friends and family, or even strangers to see if your idea is if they would be interested in it. You can start your social media platforms, like what I mentioned earlier. Start your website. The website might actually be very, very helpful because if you launch your website and social media together, even though you don't actually have your products or service on there, you can start getting data from there to see who your demographics are and what pages they're more likely to go to and so forth.
I would reiterate in terms of proving that there's a market for your product or service, kind of understanding specifically what it is that you have to offer, and do some, whether it's samples if it's a product, or some pro bono work to demonstrate kind of that folks are interested in the service that you offer. Be able to generate kind of this client base, be able to understand that there's demand for kind of what you have available. And then start to sort of formally think about how you might launch it at that juncture. Um, and then just to reiterate, in case you missed our opening remarks, I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center here at PACE, and we work with folks launching their businesses all the time, and we'd be delighted to work with you. So our email info is in the chat, but it's SBDC, that stands for Small Business Development Center. So it's SBDC@pace.edu, and just let us know you were interested in figuring out how to move forward your business venture, and we'd be happy to help.
And then it looks like in the chat, someone's asking for a contact email to apply for an internship or a link. Do you have one?
Yes, I just sent my email in the chat, and I will add a link to our careers page as well. Let me see. Yeah, I'll add it in the chat.
Okay. Another question. In the fashion industry, the relationship between wholesale and retailer was not good because wholesalers such as Nordstrom, Saks canceled a lot of orders from retailers. Retailers are being pushed or forced to open e-commerce stores. Could you please explain what makes wholesalers such as Nordstrom want to bring small business like Holy Dose into their store?
Yeah, I've heard quite a lot of stories, also in the food industry, really in any industry, of big retailers canceling orders even after the contract is signed, and that's unfortunately something you can't control, especially if you're working with big retailers because they have the legal team to fight you on that, especially. But it's I can't speak on behalf of Nordstrom's or other brands, but what I've learned from working with Nordstrom is that they're a brand that really values small businesses and especially cultured businesses. And what I mean by that is diversity. There we go, diverse businesses, and they really value that. They don't only work with the big guys or the guys who have been around a long time, but on the other side, we were part of their new beauty pop-in shop, and the reason that they create these pop-in shops is to include new brands like us, Holy Dose, for a small, limited amount of time, as opposed to keeping them on their shelves for so long. So the brands that they do keep on their shelves for so long are those brands that have been around for so long, kind of, the big brands out there. But I recommend that you search the big stores that you want to get into, the big retailers, and see if they do have any sort of pop-in shops or diversity programs or even small business heightening programs they might have. I know Bloomingdale's also has one, and try to reach out to their team to see when and if they're buying for your category.
And to also think about the importance of, a diversified client base. So if all your eggs are in the Nordstrom basket and they decide to pull out, you don't want to be in a tough position. So Gina's done an amazing job of kind of having a wide range of sales channels, both direct to customer as well as you through wholesale opportunities. So as long as you have that diversity, if one client does fall away, your business is still going to be viable.
When it comes to your marketing and advertising plan, how often is your team going in to look at your target market and make adjustments if you need to?
And anytime that we adjust our target market would be for advertising when we create ads. And in the beginning, another lesson learned is I didn't do this enough when we launched, when I should have. I developed the target markets that we used for campaigns based on prior data and getting an idea of who our current audience is. But what I should have been doing, what we should have been doing, what we do today is we go on Google Analytics and we go on the analytics page of all the other social media platforms, but especially Google Analytics, because that's that's where our website is. That's where our real customers are going. And we do that now for every campaign that we start. We make sure that it's updated, that it's the right target market. But I do have to mention, it's hard to get the right target market because that data could be there, but there can be other audiences from other platforms. So unless you have a software that can combine all of those, or you do your own data, it can be quite difficult to know exactly who your customer is. But really use Google Analytics and the social pages as well for that. I think that answered the question.
And then we'll just do one more. Briefly explain the story behind your name, behind your brand name, and how it syncs with your story.
So the name Holy Dose, I didn't come up with it until I was in the production process for the products. But how it came out was, I spent 10 years trying so many products and none of those products worked until I started blending my own supplements at home in my New York City apartment when I was not in school. And I tested them on myself, all of them, until I found a certain formula that worked. And when that happened, that moment was, wow, this is the holy grail of everything I was looking for my beauty and health routine. And so from there, holy grail and a product that can give wholesome results. That's how the name Holy Dose came about, because dose being the supplements.
Great. All right, well, it looks like it's about time to end, but thank you so much, Gina, and thank you, Andrew, for moderating. This was a really great discussion. I hope everyone who joined learned a lot and got something out of it. We have 2 more sessions featuring other alumni entrepreneurs. November 10th at the same time is going to be Ryan Barone. He started a app and company for landlords. And then November 12th is same time, Topaz Smith. She started a sustainable eco traveling company. So if you're interested in listening to them, sign up online on the alumni section of the website. It'll be a great discussion as well.
Thank you, everyone. And definitely connect with Holy Dose at holydose.com or on Instagram and Facebook at Holy Dose, or feel free to email me or connect with me on LinkedIn, Gina Holzer. Thank you for watching. And let me know if you have more questions.
And Gina,
Thanks,
I'll connect with you. LinkedIn, I have some ideas to help you out, really concrete ones. So I'll reach out to you.
Okay.